How about Saban meeting with the president to try and figure out this NIL mess? Saban, obviously the GOAT of the sport, but certainly the GOAT in that conference that you
I
represent.
claim that I represent here.
Yeah,
I think
thoughts here.
it's really interesting because I think that Saban understood well before anybody else that NIL was going to be a massive problem in the world of college football because there's no boundaries. Like there literally are no boundaries. There's no boundaries when it comes to the transfer portal. There's no boundaries on what is actually going to be written in stone. There's no boundaries on what is the actual asking price for a player. And everything is just kind of in a hypothetical situation. And we talked about this before, TJ. I think Tom was out last week. I think we talked about this last week when Tom was out. We're believing that players are getting promised all of this accolades and sums of money when we don't know for a fact that it's even written in stone. Like you're trusting the word of somebody is going to pay you that Jim Bob from JBM's Motor Mechanics is going to give you that $2.5 million. And then he writes you a check for $250 and says, oh, your word against mine because it's not written in stone. So I think what Saban's trying to do and what the president's trying to do, which we're going to talk about this from a sporting standpoint, not a political standpoint, is make sure that everything is regulated properly. If you are promising sums of money, if you have a certain set point in NIL funds, you're going to hold up your end of the bargain. And what it's also going to do is it's going to lead to, I think, different changes when it comes to the transfer portal and rules surrounding what comes in the portal. We're eventually going to get to a level of these are contracts. Much like in any other contract, if your contract is terminated, you're given a quick buyout, you're giving your last bit of your paycheck, and then you move on to your next job. But if you're not going into a buyout and you don't leave the company, you are locked into that contract, which is going to relegate the transfer portal, which is going to relegate the number of transfers you have, which is going to allow you to have, I think, more roster construction to where when we're going into the month of April and we have the start of spring games, you're not wondering, should I play this kid on my spring game, knowing that the film that he is going to get will be utilized against me for another opponent in the SEC or another opponent in the Big Ten, because I've already been told that he's entering the transfer portal. Saban was really smart when he said, when he retired, that this is going to be a big reason why a lot of coaches get out of the game. And it was a big reason why he got out of the game. I mean, there were so many rumors that came out about what conversations were like in the exit interviews after losing to Michigan 24 hours later. And it wasn't about the future of Alabama football. It was about, hey, my future at Alabama requires X amount of dollars for me to stay here or watch me go to the highest bidder. And that's a problem. And that's always going to be a problem. So I think that the plan is knowing that, again, whether or not, however you feel about the president, comes from a business background, everything that is going to be made is made in business standpoint to allow players to get relegated the right contracts and also for roster construction to stay at a stable point.
Tom, anything on this one? I'll say quickly and then I'll pass to Tom. Sorry, I led you in. And then I just think it's insane that, just again, not getting so political with it, but just the fact that this mess is having to go up to, like, if I'd have told you 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that like we would be meeting at that point, we didn't even know who the president would be, right? In 2025. But if I'd have told you that Nick Saban would have quit his job to meet with the president to try and fix college football, like imagine that statement 15 years ago. Like that's absurd. Just the place that we're in. And I don't really have some grand takeaway or, oh, here's what's going to get fixed or here's what's going to happen. But just the state that our sport is in is really, it's hilarious and depressing at the same time, right? Like it's like a hilarious mess that you're kind of watching unfold. The fact that, the GOAT of the sport has to meet with a president, a controversial president, to try and fix the sport is, hilariously awful. And that's really just my only take on it. And obviously, as a fan who obsesses over this stuff way too much, hopefully it does get fixed. Hopefully we do start to trend back to some sense of normalcy. But Cole kind of hit everything on the head there that I would take away from it. That's just kind of my observation, I suppose.
I just don't see anything changing right now because we've heard this for years. When is it actually going to be done? When are we actually going to have more regulation? When are we actually going to have rules and stipulations added into the portal? It's like, again, saying that Nebraska and Texas A&M are going to be back this year. This is where it all comes together. We've heard it for so long and we haven't seen it. So now because of one guy who, yes, major standpoint in the world of college football, if not the biggest voice in college football, has a meeting with the controversial president, this is what's going to change our sport. Let me see it in actual writing.
Yeah.
Just like I want to see every single contract in actual writing for NIL.
Yeah. I'm in favor of what Cole was saying in terms of you have to have contracts for this at some point. Like if you're in love with a 5-star, here's a 4-year deal. You don't leave, you don't transfer, you don't go early. Like you're going to be here the entire time. If you're not in love, hey, here's a 3-year deal with a 4th-year option. If it's a guy who's a 2-star, 3-star, it's like here's a 1-year deal. See if you make the team. If you want to bounce, cool, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe we can add extensions beyond that. One of my fears of this, and I know no one really cares about this, is that are we going to get to a point where the student athlete thing is abandoned? And I'm okay with that label going away because it is BS at this point. I think we all understand like the student athlete thing is such a outdated, archaic idea that was created by the NCAA. My fear is that we're going to get to a point where these players are not students and that they just work for the university. So is it now affecting generations of people that it's like, hey, you're going to play major college football, whatever sport it is at the Division I level, and you're not going to get an education. You're going to get paid to be an employee of name a school, play a sport, and you can play here for 4 years and then you're out. So I think that's something that unfortunately I could really see happening. And, you know, I know I'm a Homer and a Penn Stater, but James Franklin uses the phrasing of not transactional, but transformational. And I think that's the element that fans are upset about, is because this does feel like a business. This does feel like a transaction. And it's not this transformational, process anymore where kids go to a school, go to a community, meet people, make experiences, make relationships that last them the rest of their lives, and hopefully gain some sort of education, whether it's on or off the field, in a classroom, or just in life. And I fear that's going to go away just because they just want to pay you to play ball.
Yeah, I think that's a very realistic worry. I think that, I don't know that it's next year or within the next 2 years or anything like that, but I do think that essentially, it wouldn't shock me if it was 5 years away, so I think that's a very valid concern.
Hey, thanks for watching The Power 2. If you like this type of content, make sure you hit subscribe and check out some of our other videos found here on the channel.